Well, dance gives you the opportunity to express yourself on a greater level than you can as an everyday person. You know, like if you take, let's say I had a book of Cinderella and I loved the costumes and the story and everything. Well, you get to live the stories like that out. You get to express, you know, many different things. You kill yourself, you joyful, you're sad, you're like so many different emotions, and you're able to express them with, you know, the silence of your movements. And it's a bigger experience than you have in everyday life. You feel those things, but it's bigger, and you get to dance to this incredible music. And so, you know, the Prokofiev score, the Romeo and Juliet, I mean, there's nothing like that. Like, that's a pretty big high. My family came over from England, and we were living at Eglinton Young and Albertus Avenue. And the girl across the street was a very talented dancer, and my mother said, well, at some point I'd like Nadia to take dance, because for grace and, you know, exercise. And they said, oh, you have to make her study with Betty Oliphant, because she's one of the world's greatest teachers. So that's what I started at 7, and I lived at Keele and Lawrence when Keele was a dirt road, so I had to get out of school early sometimes to get to my ballet school in time. So I started out once a week with Betty Oliphant, and then twice a week. And then the National Ballet School opened in 1959, at which time my mother had just completed a degree at U of T and was asked to be the French teacher, and then became the academic principal and my French teacher when I went to the school from grade 9 to grade 12. So she was very good with all the students there. They would come to her, Madame Potts, and she would shut her office door and talk to them and build up their confidence again. I liked her because she was logical. So I always felt she always gave you the reason why you should do things the way she did. And then she pushed us, and she also trained us so well, so we had fewer injuries, because we were really, you know, trained almost on the male side of control of plie and things like that. But it's interesting because the people who knew her from her studio had a much closer relationship with her and a different relationship than those that didn't, who found her more scary. We kind of used to have fun, like in her studio, we'd let the cat in and out of the door of her living room where her studio was, and we laughed a lot. We had, you know, it was good. So we always had that special relationship with her. But she was tough. And, you know, for me, I was sort of a sensitive child, I'd say, and someone who found the stresses of the profession hard. She was very good at preparing us, and, you know, she really prepared you well, because she was very demanding. And what she said about her teaching is why a lot of people didn't like her, is that she made you demand of yourself and face your own weaknesses. Rather than her putting them on you, you had to face yourself. which was an interesting thing. So you had to decide, what was I going to do? Which way did I think was right? So, you know, I really enjoyed working with her. And then I published that book of her 5 classes and worked with her on those personally, which was amazing. That was great fun. So I joined the National Ballet at age 18. And I was in the talented group, but I always felt that I was near the bottom of the talented group. I wasn't someone, I never dreamt I'd be a ballerina. That didn't occur to me. But I remember Betty Oliphant wrote me a report at age 16 and said, I think Nadia can become a soloist. So then my mother said, okay, you can pursue that career then. But when I joined the company, the first thing I did was a solo from Bayadere, one that everyone else was falling over and I was the only one who could do it without, it was a lot of control. So I did this solo, and we did a tour of Belleville, Brampton, North Bay, all these tiny little places. And they saw me dance and they went, oh my God, we never knew she could dance like that. And then they started throwing everything at me. So then at 19, they decided I should do Cinderella, the lead in Cinderella, but I'd never done a principal role. So they said, okay, let's put you into Nutcracker. So I done the Sugar Plum Fairy and Snow Queen in 2 weeks while I was performing other roles in Nutcracker. And I did that in Vancouver. And I remember Celia Franca gave me this unbelievable rehearsal before, and she was always exaggerating, you know, darling, you must, you know, own the stage. And so I thought, well, this is good. And at the end of that performance, I heard her say, I think we have a ballerina on our hands. And I was 19, and I was promoted to principal dancer at 21. I mean, we were very lucky, and of course we toured a lot. And then our biggest year was the 72-73 season, where Rudolf Nureyev came. He was looking to do his Sleeping Beauty, and he wanted a company to accompany him on a big tour, and none of the American companies were available. So someone said, well, how about the National Ballet Canada? And he said, fine. Then he wanted to bring his own ballerina, but they said, no, you have to dance with our principal dancers. And so we did this. We did 198 performances in one season. And the tour ended with 16 performances in 2 weeks at the Met, 8 a week. Our biggest influence was Rudolf Nureyev. And he, you know, we loved him and he liked us. So he came to the National Ballet, and Celia Franca gave him fair rein to kind of direct the company on the artistic level. And he'd worked in other companies who didn't want him because the men were a bit upset about losing some of their jobs, and the demands became bigger on the male dancers at the time. But we came and we just, you know, whatever you want. So that was great. And he coached us. He coached every dancer. That was the thing about him that made him sometimes different from the big stars. You had to do what he said, but he also was very interested in the entire production. I remember once I was doing Queen of the Willies, and he's warming up at the second act, and he said, now Nadia, do this, do that, do this. Audience will like much more. Of course, then I did, and he said, see? So, I mean, he was, and if he agreed to dance with you, then he accepted you. So as long as you did do what he said, but you know, he accepted you, and he was always fiddling with things and correcting and changing things, like up till opening night in New York with Sleeping Beauty, like suddenly he changed some fairies and until it was that show was perfect. I mean, we had no idea, because Toronto, we didn't get that many companies coming into Toronto. We hadn't seen a lot of outside dancers, none of the videos, no YouTube. And so we kept thinking, oh, Margot Fontaine and the Royal Ballet danced at the Met, and they were a sensation. That's how Margot Fontaine made it, too. So we're sort of thinking we're not good enough, we're not good enough. Some of our coaches were telling us that, too. And so when we arrived there, open night, we became one of the top 10 companies in the world overnight. One of my most memorable performances, I was doing my first Giselle, which I did at the Met, Luckily, he gave me a 20-minute rehearsal instead of a 15-minute rehearsal. And I had never really done a complete run through the ballet. I'd never done it in the set. But it was probably the best performance of my life. I mean, I kind of stood outside myself going, wow, now I know what it's like to be one of those dancers. And he was so generous. Like my grandparents went back, because they were Russian, went back to his dressing room and they were talking to him in Russian and you're wonderful. And he said, but what about your granddaughter? And in the theater, the day before, at the State Theater, Mariana Tchaikovsky had also done her first Giselle. So there was a review and they compared me to Ulanova, who is, you know, one of the most famous Russian Giselles. So that was a performance I'll never forget. And he was so generous. The higher you go, the lonelier you get, because people want your job, right? so it's tough. I mean, you do have some support, but not a lot, because a lot of the younger dancers would like you to probably retire so they can take over, to be honest. And we were saying, Vanessa and I were talking about what were the hardest things to do. One of the hardest things to do as a dancer is, we had two studios, one on the second floor and one on the basement. So the principal dancers, we were rehearsing on the basement. Let's say you're doing Swan Lake. So you're doing it all, everything, and learning it all. You're doing your run-throughs down there. And then comes the company run-through. So you're up in the big studio, everyone's there, you know, Celia Franco, who's terribly scary, and other people, all lined up. All the dancers are sitting there on the floor looking at you, and you have to do that run-through. That is stressful, especially if it doesn't go well. That was one of the most stressful things. I mean, at least on the stage, you don't have there's a black hole, that, you know, there are people there, but, you know, that's hard to get through. The great thing about a dancer is that often people don't have that opportunity. You're in a class with anyone who happens to be a guest. So, I mean, I danced with Brezhnev, danced with Nureyev, I danced with Anthony Dowell, who is the English dancer. I danced with Peter Martins, who is phenomenal. I danced with Fernando Bajones. I danced with Peter Schofus. And, you know, they would come into class, and Eric Brun, I actually danced with him. There's another story on that one. I danced with him at age 19 because I was supposed to understudy Effie, the second-year role in La Sylphide. And Veronica was supposed to do it with him, but she got appendicitis. So I had like 3 days to learn this. And I danced with Eric Brun. I couldn't believe my eyes that I had that chance to dance with him. But, you know, they would come into class, and of course, all eyes on them. I always remember Eric Brun would come in, and he did the most phenomenal retiré. He had the most phenomenal sense of life. And we're all like, okay. So anyway, Lynn Seymour would come. There was Anna Larkinson. And so everyone would just, like, you're in class with these people, and you can steal. You copy. You learn. Like, we learned so much from watching these dancers and working with them. Everything I dreamed of doing as a child, all the ballets I wanted to do, Giselle, I wanted to do Romeo and Juliet, of course, and I wanted to do this ballet Solitaire, and I wanted to do 1 in 5, and, you know, and La Sylphide. You know, there were a lot of ballets that, you know, as a child, I thought, Nutcracker even, I would think, there's no, I mean, I didn't even dream that big. So it was like amazing that I got there. And then when I was sort of got to be a principal dancer, I'm looking around me saying, well, where were these people? Some of them who were supposed to be more talented than me. But I think in order to be a principal dancer, you have to have some kind of inner strength. Because a lot of people can't deal with the stress of that lifestyle. And a lot of people don't make it because they can't deal with it. So, you know, though I didn't feel I was terrifically strong, I must have been, because I survived. When I left, I never set foot on the stage again. I said, that's it. I've done everything I've wanted to do. I don't want to spoil it. I left, you know, where people thought, oh, she still looks good. And then I knew I wanted to teach. So I started teaching part-time all over the place. And I then was teaching at Ryerson part-time, and because I was replacing someone. And the students liked me so much that they said, oh, we wanted to stay. So I did. So I worked part-time, which was good because I got an overview of that dance program, which was very outdated at the time. And then we were at a big meeting, and the chairs of the school said, we're looking for a new program director. So I remember thinking, oh God, I'll never want to be a director. But then I thought, it's daytime work, because when you're a ballet teacher, it's after school hours, and I had 2 young children. So I thought, well, I'll apply for this job. It's daytime. And it's funny, because Lois Smith had her school, right? Remember, she did George Brown, and she told me, one day, she said, you know you're going to be director of a program. And I said, oh, come on, Lois. But she must have seen something in me. So I took over the dance program, which the acting program, one of the acting program teachers said, we bought wreaths for the dance program's grave, but now you've come, we have to throw them away. So I had to upgrade that program and gain more students. And then afterwards, I changed it from a 3-year diploma program to a 4-year degree. But then I was really lucky because I got Karen Duplessis and Vickie St. Denis. Karen teaching modern and all the history, and she knew everything. And also Vickie St. Denis, who is a true jazz teacher. And so the 3 of us, the triumvirate, we kind of ran that program and worked together for a common goal. Jack of all trades. They could do modern, ballet, jazz, singing, and acting, and create their own work. So, I think that was the thing that really was our goal, to train the best dancers and to prepare them for the world. Like, they even did a course at the end where they learned to, what would happen if you did your own professional orientation? How would you start your own company? So it was to prepare them, and also I felt with the students that I tried to prepare them for life, for the ups and downs of life. Because I'd say, if you're in this program, you are probably not a level person. You're probably an up and down person. So the good news is, when you're down, you're down. That's not good news, but you'll always come up. And I'd say to them, when you're down, just think of me. There are lots of people who are down. Don't overthink it. Don't indulge into it. It's normal. You'll get through it. You'll get through this. So I always try to provide them also with an outlook on life. It was far more interesting than teaching at a ballet school, which would actually probably have been more stressful as well. This way you could do what you wanted as a teacher, you could make your own mistakes, you could see it before your very eyes on students. And we had a much better relationship. They all called me Nadia, and then I worked with the modern dance community, which were amazing. I had much more to learn from them. I'd done my ballet stuff, and I worked with so many of the modern dance community that were great. I learned from Vickie and Karen. We were constantly learning from each other and, discussing things and arguing. We could argue about things. Why would you do that? Well, I think I should do it. Like, we were very open with each other. So that was great. I had people to, any decision I had to make. I had a phenomenal chair in Ira Levine and then in Perry Schneiderman, very, very supportive chairs. I couldn't have done it without them, because there was a ballet dancer thrown into an academic setting. It's a bit scary at times when you go into these meetings and, should I say what I think or shouldn't I? And of course, the interesting thing in a university, you can say what you think and not get fired, but in the ballet company you could not, absolutely not. We taught the students not to fear creation And so they, you know, we'd be auditioning pieces for the choreographic workshop. In the end, there'd be like over 100 pieces auditioning. We had to do it over 3 days, and then we would choose so many of them. And then we were also very good about, you know, when choreographers would come, getting the students in the right works, giving the choreographers what they wanted. We'd be on the phone. We'd do it on a Friday, and then we'd be on the phone all weekend discussing things, trying to make sure every student was in the right place and the choreographers got who they wanted. And so there was a lot of care taken over a lot of these things, trying to give the students the best possible, you know, experience that they could get. So that was one thing, yeah. And then we did, with the degree program, we decided that the production program had already got a 4-year degree. So it was the acting and dance, and it was very difficult. We had to do something different. So we combined the 2 programs, but the big courses of each year, acting 1, 2, 3, 4, and dance act 1, 2, 3, 4, were big sections, like 12-hour courses with more than that. And then they did courses together. So they did performance history, they did production elements with the production students. We also created a course called Creative Performance Studies for actors and dancers to work together to create their own works. And that was taught by Sheldon Rosen, a playwright. And that was incredible. Again, what it gave the students, it gave them confidence. They did hard ballet stuff. Like, they were good, they were strong dancers by the time they left. And, you know, did a lot of contemporary work and jazz and everything. And I think just to prepare them for whatever they might come up against as a performer. And as, you know, being able to dance with whatever opportunities came to them. Also to be able to teach and to be better teachers than their teachers, which was a very important thing, because a lot of them went back to their studios, opened their own schools, had smaller companies attached to their schools. So, and to prepare them as people for life. You know, any dancer should be preparing for a second career. And that's a good, I knew fairly early on that I was going to teach, that I was a good teacher. And so that was good to know. It enabled me to dance because I knew I could get out of it. I had to, that there wouldn't be an empty person there after you took the performance away from me. Stop taking your time. Stop